All right, it is time for TJRS, February 24th. Yesterday was spring-like, almost summer-like with the temperature. We got a little cocky. We were leading off first base, a little bit too big. Got picked off. Old man Winter said, here's a little something for the effort today. Rain, sleet, snow, and I don't know. Hear that with more weather forecast. Here's Riggo.
All right, Toddy. Thank you very much. Everybody, welcome. Glad you got us tuned in today. You know, it's ironic, Todd, that you start off with the weather, because that's exactly what I was going to start, where I'm going to start.
But I didn't know what you were going to start with.
Let me ask you a question. Could you know the answer to this? What's today remind you of, the kind of weather we're having today? Think about it. In your past experiences and all the places you've been.
Well, definitely Alaska.
Thank you.
Alaska.
You can stop right there. That was the right answer. Because I was going to say, if this reminds you of Fort Lauderdale.
No. In Montreal, it would be snowing because it's very little stuff like this. It's just like, we're snowing.
It's either snow or
it's snow
clear.
or it's dry. But Alaska?
Yes.
Gray, cold.
Yes.
Rainy.
Yes. Maybe England. I don't know because I haven't ever been over there enough to know. But you nailed it. And it's funny because it made me a little nostalgic, believe it or not. I mean, you go, really? This makes you nostalgic? But it does, because the first time I ever went to Alaska, I went up there on a boys club deal. They invited several players. Mike Curtis was actually one of them. He's the only one anybody.
The old linebacker.
Huh?
The old linebacker,
yeah,
number 32.
Late linebacker, yeah. Maybe the one and only guy that made me think twice when I was getting ready for the game, because he was so active, you know? He was just...
Mike took it a little too serious.
I think he did, actually. Yeah, I do. But he was good for it. Now. Don't
Yes,
get me
he
wrong.
was.
You usually look up, and there he was, and right in the grill.
He seems like the kind of guy, and I'm sure some of the other linebackers, like, thank God I can do this on the football field, because I'd be in a bar doing the same damn thing.
He might be one of them. But remember what they said about Mike Curtis. He was an animal on the field and
Mr.
a gentleman
Nice guy?
off.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember that?
Yes, now it's coming back to me, yeah.
And I've always told people I was just the opposite. I was a gentleman on the field.
You see Riggo at Clyde's, it's on.
Oh, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. But from the standpoint, no, I wasn't getting in your face now.
Right.
But people was going, gee, I wish he'd leave. This guy is repulsive, obnoxious even. But no, today reminds me, and Chuck Knox, you remember him, the old coach?
Yeah.
Seattle. Well, he coached in L.A. He was the head coach of L.A. for a while. He actually started with the Jets, and he left the year before I got there, and I think took the L.A. job. He was the offensive line coach up there the year that I think that the Jets upset the Colts in Super Bowl III. But anyway, he was another one I'm trying to think. That was really the only people that I can think of that anybody would recognize. So anyway, we go up there in the boys club, and we go out and, kind of put on a little, what they call that, a camp or whatever, like a little football camp for the Alaskan youth. And then our reward is they're going to take us down to a town called King Salmon, which is basically headquarters. Have you ever been there?
No.
Okay. I was going to say, which is headquarters for, where the, what do you call it, National Park Service has for Katmai National Park, where that's where everybody basically goes through to get into the park. So, and the Naknek River, runs through there, and so it was a fishing opportunity to go up there and fish for king salmon. Something, as a kid, all I ever dreamed of was Alaska. It was like that was where I always wanted to be, and so here. Can
you put your finger on why that was?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because I think. And this gets into a whole other story, so you got to keep.
I'll park that one. Yeah. I got that. We're waiting for the parking space. I'm going to save that.
Please do that,
Gotcha.
because I will tell you about how I got into this, and it's another irony I had on the way. An irony that I had on the way here today. So I'll get into that, but hold that parking.
Got your parking spot reserved.
Exactly, park that. So anyway. The reason that I was always fascinated with Alaska is because I wanted to be a mountain man. Which you still could be, actually, technically.
Jeremiah Johnson?
Yeah, one of those guys. I mean, I always felt like, growing up in Kansas, and I've always had such and this is really, once again, don't want to get too far into this, but I've always had such great admiration for Native Americans. For whatever reason, I've always thought to myself, anybody that can make fire without matches got some shit going on. You know what I'm saying? In fact, Now I'm going to go again. So you got.
All right, now we're double parked.
You're double
We'll
parked.
double parked.
I always thought about running for mayor in Washington, D.C., and my first basic platform was we're all going to learn how to make fire without matches. Now, I know you're going, what are you
Forget
talking about?
statehood. Forget lowering taxes. We're going to learn how to make fire, people. And you know what? You would win. You would win.
It's going to be taught in our schools, in kindergarten, and you get into advanced fire making in first grade, and so on and so forth. So anyway, yeah, I was always been amazed. And so that was the era I wished I could have grown up in. Well, the irony is, when you think about it long enough, I kind of ended up in an occupation similar to that. Harsh, brutal. I mean, you know, you can kind of, at least in my mind, I kind of thought, well, maybe you did be kind of a mountain man of sorts.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it doesn't come any more rough and tumble. And I think the other thing about Native Americans and indigenous folks, and you had to live off the land.
Yeah.
You had to build your own, domicile. You had to go get your own food somehow, some way, grow it, kill it, or whatever. So
I don't think they grew much, though. But a little history that I know about most Native, particularly the Plains Indians that were out there where I grew up.
I know it as maize. You may call it corn.
There you go. See, they invented it, I think. I'm not sure. Which, by the way, is a grass. You didn't know that either,
I did not know that.
Yeah, corn is a grass. But, I mean, because they were a wandering group. They followed the buffalo. So, and then the trappers, those were the guys, like you said, Jeremiah Johnson and what's his name, the guy that, Kit Carson and these kind of people. Somehow and it's probably from television, from watching movies back when I was a kid. There was something about that I just went, wow.
And it was supposedly the last frontier?
Yeah, and space is the last frontier, Captain Kirk.
Now we're living
Star
long,
Trek.
and I could never do this
Star
either.
Trek. Yeah, that's a tough one. Did he keep his fingers together?
I think Jacoby and a couple guys are forever stuck like that with their Star Trek.
Anyway, now
we're going back to Alaska and the tour with Coach Knox and Mike Curtis, and you're giving back to the Utes of Alaska.
Well, exactly. So we go to King Salmon. I'll be damned. This is late June now, right? Late June. Around here, it can be 95 degrees. It was exactly the same kind of weather that's out there today. It wasn't quite this cold. I just looked. It's 38 degrees.
And it gets dark at about 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, well, back, at that time of year, because it's the
late June.
It's actually,
midnight.
11, and it never really gets dark. Right? It gets dusky.
It's crazy.
And then I think it's around 2 a.m., the sun's back up. This is the kind of weather. And you know what? I think back about that, and I've kind of gotten away from that. I became a fly fisherman. Smell that purple air, breathe the purple air. Because I used to. This is basically bait and tackle for the most part. You drag what do you call them? You'd back troll wiggle warts and catch king salmon out of the Naknek River. Now that goes into a whole other thing where the populations have run down. But for me, it was so. But this trip I didn't do it. But then I met somebody, and I used to go up there every year and do this. You got a bunch of beer in the boat. You got somebody running. Because I was with a guide, so I could drink, do whatever I want, and sitting there fishing, shooting the bullshit with everybody, and then all of a sudden somebody's got a fish on.
John, the guide's sitting there going, you're like, hey, what kind of bait you? And he goes, we don't even use bait.
No, not really. Well, it's true. Well,
the fish are so abundant.
There was a guy by the name of Captain Knack, which once again we go off here or there, but he would use salmon eggs, which in the river at the time was illegal, but he did cheating. Catch a lot of fish.
That's cheating.
That is cheating. And I don't know if he ever got caught cheating. He may have. He should have. But yeah, today definitely reminds me of that kind of, which gets me into a whole other thing, and I think it's gone now. Do you realize that it's like, I'm not the only one that's fascinated with Alaska. Think about this now. I thought maybe, I was trying to think, I could think of 3 or 4 shows, cable TV, reality shows that are based in Alaska. How many do you think there are?
Let's see. You got all your fishing shows. You got a bunch of fishing shows. You got, I think.
Name me one.
The
Most Dangerous Catch.
Most Dangerous Catch.
Right.
I think there's a logger show that also goes on up there. I know there's some gold shows.
Yep.
There's some gold shows.
You're
I'm going to
good.
say there's 5 Alaskan-based shows.
Listen, I think there's one more than what there's 11. Can you believe that?
Doesn't surprise
Look,
me.
I'm going to run through them for you. Deadliest Catch, Gold Rush.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I've seen both of these. Alaska, The Last Frontier, I think I've seen that. That's on the Discovery Channel. Building Alaska, I'm not sure. Bering Sea Gold, I've seen it, but don't think I've watched it. Life Below Zero, I like this show. There's a gal up there that lives up inside the Arctic Circle, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head.
I've seen that.
And my wife loves to tell me that that's my girlfriend. And, you know, she is kind of attractive, but, you know, she's rough and tumble now.
I got a feeling.
She lives there by herself.
I got a feeling those armpits and other areas are a little rough. just a guess.
I'd have to
just
go
a
with that.
guess.
Well, listen, I'm kind of going, yeah, she's my girlfriend, all right. But anyway, let's move on here. Life Below Zero. Then you got Alaskan Bush People. I watch that every once in a while. I like that. Alaska Mega Machines. I haven't ever seen that show. Started in 2016.
That's got to be
Gold Rush,
with the big machinery up on the pipeline and stuff. That's extraordinary equipment.
which I'm fascinated by. I might have to try and find this someplace because I'm into big infrastructure. Gold Rush, Whitewater, Living Alaska, and Into Alaska. I don't know much about that. That's on the Animal Planet, it says. But so there's a huge fascination with Alaska.
Well, I know you know this because here's...
And of course, Slim is up there too,
well, that's
which
just it.
actually should be the, what I say, 11. If there's a show I watched the other night because I was sent to my jail cell by my lovely wife. Actually, it was what do you call it, self-exile.
But you did get 3 squares a day.
Yes, I slid under the table or under the door. Exactly. So I went down there and I turned on the TV and I'm going, I can't watch this anymore. It's some kind of news bullshit. And so I started going through and all of a sudden I see this Alaska Aviation or something. And they're talking about, because I think that airport there in Anchorage, I can't think of the name of it. Not Ted Stevens because that's the international.
Talking about Lake Hood?
Lake Hood's another one right there, but besides
Well, that's the
Stevens,
largest seaplanes, I believe, in the world.
Yes. But this one is more like downtown, but not downtown. But at one time, it had the most air traffic of any other, I think Saudi Arabia had more, but they were the second in the world as far as, small planes in and out of there.
Oh, wow,
Corporate
yeah.
traffic, whatever you want to call it. But so where was I going with that?
Relative to Alaska and the various characters and Slim being a leading character.
Yeah.
That would be a great reality show. Life on the Kvichak.
At Slim's Lodge. I couldn't agree more.
But think about that, John, and that's why what I learned about the year I spent up there, and I tell people, Alaska, you have to visit it. I mean, it's one of the greatest places on the planet to visit, especially, I know a lot of people that have taken cruises. You will see things that you will never see anyplace else in the world. And having lived there, you don't ever want to live there, in my opinion, because the seasonal changes in the light and the dark and all that, and cabin fever is legit and real. And you will find more characters. And I mean characters. I mean, we live in a very homogenized...
We'll see a few down here.
Yeah,
but almost
just
everybody,
a few.
Everybody's a character up there.
I'll never forget the first time I'm up there going into a McDonald's, and 2 dudes came in, and they both had 6-shooters and holsters, like we were in a Western, because you could carry, both of them did. And I'm sitting there going, I was freaked out by it.
Did the restaurant have swinging doors by any chance?
You want large fries? But the characters there are unbelievable. You also find a lot of people, they're off the grid, okay? You got a lot of non-conformity, I've learned, and a lot of people escaping stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key word right there, I think. People are running from something. They got
escaping.
2 ways they go. They go to Alaska or they
Hawaii.
go to Mexico.
Or Hawaii.
Well, I've never thought of Hawaii. That's another good spot. But that's actually, no, Hawaii would be far enough away that it'd be might hard to trail you. I guess if you're really desperate, you go to Mexico because you're crossing an international border. They don't want to bring you back. But yeah, I just, like I said, I'm totally, amazed by and the weather today just, made me it actually made me miss the salmon fishing, because I kind of got to where I was, like I said, I was like, breathing all that purple air with the fly rod. And the trout, that's that's the fish. The rainbows, they got some, like on the Queejack with Slim. They got probably, according to Slim now, and Slim's a salesman, but I think he's got a little truth in what Slim says.
We got to get Slim back on here.
Yeah, but they're like one of the strongest fighting rainbows in the world, just because of the environment they live in. But I'll tell you something: you get a king salmon on the line. And of course, that's with terminal tackle. I have caught one with a fly rod before, but it wasn't really casting. I was trolling with it. That's not really fly fishing, but it was a hell of a challenge to get that thing in. But those things will come out of the water and jump like a trout will too. Don't kid yourself. And you get a 40, 50-pound salmon coming out of the water, and there's a lot of good eating there too.
Yeah, I mean, in this weather, the other place that I believe is like this, and I spent some time there, is Seattle, and it's depressing, and it's that light little annoying mist, then rain, then mist. That's always there, chills you to the bone. We're ready for winter, we're done with winter. I'd like to believe,
but it's still February time.
I know. Like I said, we got cocky. We got cocky. We were leading off.
You bring up an interesting thing there when you talk about Seattle. It seems to me, of course, it gets a little warm as you go down. You take Anchorage, and you take Seattle, and you got San Francisco. That's all that, what is it called? The Japanese Current, I believe it's called, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it kind of, that's what, because you get inland, you get Fairbanks. Fairbanks has got one of the greatest, I mean, it's up there. Maybe the top 10 of temperature extremes in the world. I mean, it can get to be 100 degrees in Fairbanks during the wintertime. And I got to believe, I don't even know what that's like. I've been in Alaska when it hits like 80, 85. You can't hardly move.
Oh, here's the sun. Here's Alaska. I mean, you're that much closer.
That's what I'm figuring it has to be, because underneath you is permafrost. So there's actually... it's not like there's warmth underneath you, but still you can hardly move. But yeah, you take 100 degrees in the summertime, and when you go down to a minus 70 in the wintertime, now that's a pretty good temperature swing.
That should be Alaska Extreme, right?
That's exactly what that is.
Maybe that should be your reality show. We're going to take a Hall of Fame football player and throw him into Alaska. And both seasons, it's Riggo Extreme, Alaska style.
40 years ago, I might have been into that. I don't think the big guy can handle that anymore. I keep thinking I can, but I know deep in my heart it just ain't going to shake out. Let's shift here just for a second, because I think there's something we need to talk about just a little bit. Now, we're not a political show at all, but I don't know. What's Vladimir thinking? This guy is a maniac. Everything they say is, I mean, I don't know enough about, I mean, I wonder what it would be like to sit down with this guy. And what's he really thinking? And is he really good for it, or is he just like a little bully? And I think that's all he is. I mean, if Vladimir was in here, do you think he'd call us out and say, all right, let's step outside?
No.
In fact, that would be a pretty good deal there, because our president likes to step outside. I think the two of them, they get down, they sit down face to face, and they get to talking, and all of a sudden, Joe says, okay,
listen,
let's step outside.
I've talked to Corn Pop. I got Corn Pop. Remember, Joe used to mix it up in Delaware and he got in Corn Pop's face and a couple other guys'
Corn
face.
Pop?
They were some local guys that Joe had word with when he was growing up back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know
and Joe
that.
ran. He talked to some tough characters.
Joe can speak with his fist.
He got their minds right. Back in the day, that was a big part.
This reminds me then, and I did play football, so it reminds me of a story. The story is what I should say. George Allen, when I first came here, I'll never forget, we were in there in a meeting, and we were getting ready to play Dallas. And you probably heard me tell this story, but most of the folks there probably never have heard this story. But George got up one day in the meeting, and it's probably a Wednesday or a Thursday, and he goes, guys, we're playing Dallas. And I'm thinking, okay, what do you got, George? And he says, we hate these guys. They hate us, and we hate them. And I'm, okay, George, it's just a game, but keep going. Calm down. It's going to be all right. And so then he goes, if I could, if I could, and we'd settle the game that way, I'd fight Tom Landry at the 50-yard line. And I'm thinking back there to myself, oh, that's a bad idea. Real bad idea. We got no shot if you're going to take on
Tom takes off his little hat.
Takes off the fedora.
You want a piece of me?
He literally would have said, I got chunks of guys like you in my stool.
It's go time.
I'll never forget that. I thought, George, you've lost your mind. Of course, he couldn't have been serious, but he acted like he was. I mean, then I'm thinking, I'd kind of like to see that, actually. I'd go, well, let's see if you got it. But, he seemed to be spunky. Oh, and I know I didn't want to get completely away from Putin.
Okay, but Putin's the kind of guy who's like, yeah, Mr. Riggins. Oh, you would like to talk, insult me. Okay. He'd smile in your face, and then the next door handle you touch has a little Novichok on it, and then you're not feeling too good. I mean,
like
that's what
about
they're
3 or 4 weeks. Of
yeah.
You talking about radioactive
Yeah.
stuff?
Don't worry.
That's what I'm saying. I think down deep he is a bully because if you call him out one-on-one, in fact, here's what they ought to do. They ought to get the mayor of Kiev and him to go one-on-one. Do you know who the mayor of Kiev is? You're going to love this. I saw it yesterday, and I looked in the paper and went, what? Is that who I think it is? And it was. Vitaly Klitschko. He's the mayor of Kiev. 6'7".
The boxer?
The boxer. Now, he is good for it.
Yeah,
if he says, do you want to step outside, don't step outside.
Yeah.
Run, hide under a table, but do whatever you got to do.
Sadly.
Think about that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately.
He's the mayor of Kiev.
They got some tough people. They're good for it.
They're good for it. They're good for it.
This is terrible. Putin's a psychopath. I mean,
that's where you go. Sociopath, psychopath.
He just is because.
I mean, what's the point? I mean, we're in the 21st century. I don't want to call it colonialism, but isn't where you just decide that basically, like the captain in Cool Hand Luke, you got your dirt in my hole. Basically, that's what he's saying. I mean, I don't. Geopolitically, it's hard. I think the lay person, as myself, you get ideas of what should be done. But if you talk to State Department people, not that I have or know anything about it, and they, of course, there's varied views, I'm sure. And you talk to the military and what should be done. Does anybody really? I mean, is there a clear-cut answer? All you got is a bunch of ideas. You talk about the sanctions. You do this. Nobody wants to send U.S. troops into this thing. I mean, it's like. There ain't no good spot. But what's weird about this, I'm thinking, is in which I keep reading today. They've invaded now. You did know that.
Yeah. It's on.
It's on, exactly. And if you're Germany, if you're France, if you're any of these countries, it's not so much those countries, but the people. And my doctor is Czech, and she grew up under communist rule. In Prague, where she grew up, and story she tells me raises the hair on the back of your neck. And these countries are now Poland, the Czech Republic, some of these other countries that are right there. Is this just but a first step when you're taking to, and probably, in other words, this maniac is going to try to recreate the old USSR.
Well,
I would think.
That's what they're saying.
That is unacceptable. And it's really where, and even China, figuring how they're kind of one of our big competitors, right? And they want to be number one. They're kind of scratching their head. They don't know. I mean, this is what I've read. The facts of this, I'm not sure, but this is what I've been reading, is they're kind of not exactly backing Putin's move, because there ought to be true hell to pay. And it's interesting because I don't know how you pull this off in your country, because I'm thinking Russians are a noble and decent people. So how does but when you rule by fear, I guess, who's going to be the one that stands up and says, hey, Vladimir, get the hell out of the Ukraine?
Well, John, look how long he's been in charge. He has a puppet president, and then he pulls the strings behind everything. He's been in power.
And then comes back.
He's been in power the entire time. He's never,
20 years
at
now,
least. He's never not been in control of the situation. So how do you overthrow a tyrant like that is the age-old question, because the truth of the matter is Russia's in trouble and they've been hurting. This is almost like a cry to be noticed and be a big deal again. And that's back to what you said, is they want to go back to the glory days of the USSR. And that is the dangerous part of this relative to, if this does spill into Poland and a NATO country and this and that or whatever, that's how small little things like this, we haven't, thank God, haven't seen in a long time, become far bigger deals. And especially the way they're already shutting off the technologies and the banking systems, and you start hitting, electrical grids, and then we got a far bigger deal on our hands.
Well, yeah, I mean, what they say is that this has the potential to be the biggest ground war since 1945 in Europe. Something along those lines. I don't know, or, I guess that's, Ukraine is kind of between Europe and, I don't know if it's considered, what do you call it, Asia, but I think it is considered Asia. I mean, Europe. I'm not sure. But, I mean, that's very upsetting when you think about it. I mean, we're over here and you don't think too much about it. I mean, I do a little bit, because then you keep thinking, well, he's not going to, well, he's just bluffing, he's bluffing. Well, guess what, folks? He ain't bluffing anymore. He drew first blood.
Yeah, and they're not kidding around, because this has been going on. You've seen it amassing up, but now there are reports they have undercover death squads in the capital cities. They're looking for the Klitschkos and those type of people to take them out. And so, terrible situation.
Not good.
We got to see.
Good. Like I said, we're not a political show, but there's just something I felt like we had to talk about. I had to mention something about that today.
All right, John, at TJRS, we are all about news and current events and the great outdoors.
Yeah.
Military, toys for big boys, heavy equipment, machinery, and the Winter Olympics that we never got a chance to talk about. Now, apparently, nobody was talking about the Winter Olympics because lowest ratings almost in the history of the Winter Games. So
I would believe that.
Did you watch any of it?
No, not one film, not one frame of anything that I saw. I can't even think of watching something on the news that they showed somebody winning something, somebody losing something. I don't think so. I mean, I saw some still photos in the paper, but that was about it.
And I saw
the biggest thing about the Olympics that I'm aware of was which is, I guess, is the what do you want to call it? The greatest draw is the figure skating. And the
typically, yes.
Skating. That's
and that was shrouded in what Christine Brennan says the greatest controversy in the history of the sport. And I mean, the Olympics have jumped the shark, in my opinion, overall. It's such a corrupt organization. Yeah. There's so much billions, hundreds of millions and billions that are being transacted.
It's a political statement.
So, again, remember, the Russians were banned from this, but the Russian athletes were not. The Russian Olympic Committee. So, I mean, it's so silly.
That's
right. It does nothing. Well, we want to punish the country, but not the athletes. Well, you can't have it both ways.
That's what I'm thinking.
So, I saw a couple of the figure skating things and a couple of bars that I was hanging at because they had it back on, and then all the controversy. Couldn't get into any of it, and nobody did, and it's weird. I think it's jumped the shark. But one particular story, John, let this be a lesson to future Winter Olympians, and choose your sports wisely. This Finnish cross-country skier right here that we have on the screen, Remi Lindholm. And John, playing football in the rough and tumble world, you've seen, you've heard, you've been, gruesome injuries, right?
Joe T comes to mind immediately.
Yeah. Well, Remy suffered a frozen penis right here. This gentleman right here, cross-country skier. It's the second time he has suffered a freezing penis after a race. So it was so cold that they reduced the 50-kilometer race by 20 kilometers to a 30-kilometer race. It was minus 17 degrees. And
Fahrenheit, I see.
And Remy, he finished 28th, okay? Finished 28th, and they have to put emergency heating packs on his privates, if you will. And then they said that's when it's just excruciating because, as you know, being out in the cold, your extremities are the first thing.
Oh, it is.
And when you got to reheat those, let's just start with your toes and how painful. I've been skiing in Laurentian Shield up in the mountains of Quebec, and growing up skiing up there at some points. And me and my brothers would cry after skiing because just sitting in the car and the reheating effect where it's just like daggers going, the blood getting back into. So young Remy, he says he thinks he's going to be okay, thinks he'll be able to reproduce, and let that be a lesson. So I did a little investigation on Mr. Remy here, and let's just say that this is all adding up because that's Remy right there too, practicing.
That's him.
That's him, and he likes to practice in extreme conditions, and didn't work. Did not work.
All I can say is this, Todd. My dad used to have a saying when it was really cold. You know what it was? It's so cold out there it'd freeze the balls off a brass monkey. And apparently it was that cold where Remy was skiing. It probably did the whole deal. I can't quite imagine this, though, when you think about frostbite. I mean, froze? I'm not following. Frostbite, I'm going to tell you, that man's dick's going to fall off.
They said they brought it back to life.
Because maybe it didn't get his testicles, and they're going to have to draw it out with a shred.
Well, he did say in the translation from Finnish was that the eggs are warming up nicely.
Okay. So that's, he finished 28.
Twigs and berries.
You finished 28. I don't know if I'm going to sacrifice my ability to have sex for a 28th place finish at the Olympics. Let's face it. This guy, he wanted it bad. I wonder if he had any idea of where he was. He surely was, because there's other skiers out there with him. Or does everybody go one at a time?
No. He finished like 4 minutes and change behind that. He was toast.
And that's the one thing he wished he really was, literally toast. Oh yeah. Well, Remy, good luck, Remy. I'm going to finish up with this. Yesterday, we planted, I didn't plant it, but, we did our landscaping at the property, right? And it took quite a while to get there, but we finally got it in. This has been about 5-6 years ago. So the landscaper put in a bunch of grasses. And I'm from the tall grass prairie out in Kansas, the Midwest, right? We're talking about the Native Americans and the buffalo. Now, that's what the buffalo, 60 million head of them, that's what they survived off of, was big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, and switchgrass. Those are the tall grass prairies out there. And so I got to go out there. Now, you got, this stuff. And what they do, what the Native Americans used to do, and they still do it out there, is you burn this stuff off in the springtime. And it promotes the growth from underneath. And the Native Americans figured out sometimes it's lightning that causes it, but all of a sudden you get more buffalo when you got more green grass. So there's a method to their madness. Anyway, so I'm out there yesterday, and I'd cut some of it. And this stuff, some of it's, well, I don't know if you can see over here, but it's probably
4 feet, 5 feet?
Yeah, about 4 feet off. It grows big and bushy and all that stuff. It doesn't really look like the tall, excuse me, please, the tall grass prairies, but there's a lot of grass there. So I go in there with a weed eater and I cut all this stuff down. And here's another, like you talk about ironies, because my mom was from Minnesota. And she grew up on a little 80-acre farm. She was born in 1920. She's no longer with us, but she grew up hard scrabble out there on 80 acres of a little dairy farm. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid, this is where you go, how time and all this stuff, and then the progress that has been made. They had a communal thrashing machine. You know what that is? Mm-mm. That's what when you harvest. They did it like you'd see in Europe sometimes nowadays, where you have the sheaves. They go out there with a machine and they cut like oats, and then you tie a string around it. You've seen that probably over the years with corn, and they're stacked, and then you get a bunch of them stacked together and turned into a shock. And then you go out there and you throw that onto a wagon, you bring that back and you feed that into a thrashing machine, and it separates the chaff from the oats or whatever, and then it blows that into a big straw pile. Okay. And then you get the grain that comes out of it. So, my grandfather, and he milked cattle twice a day, and I'm thinking, basically it was the life of a guy. You couldn't have a farm without a pitchfork, right? I mean, you need a pitchfork because they also had the hay in the mow was blown in there in big piles. They had hooks that take it and drop it in there, and you'd have to get a pitchfork to go feed the cattle and all this stuff. And I realized yesterday, I'm thinking, sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because here I am out there with a pitchfork, and I'm throwing it in the back of the
Did you have your coveralls on? Did you have your bib over?
No, but don't. You know what? It's funny you should say that, Todd. There's something about that time in my life. Once again, it goes back to the mountain men and all this stuff. But when we used to go to Minnesota for 1 week out of the year, basically, it was almost, my dad probably was very similar to Vladimir in his outlook on how to raise children. So that was the 1 week out of the year that basically Vladimir actually went on vacation. He wasn't around. And plus, we were in Minnesota. There was a river.
Were you guys thinking about how to overthrow the regime?
We were probably a lot like the folks in Russia right now going, I think this is a bad idea, but I ain't going to say nothing. So, you were in there, like my grandmother went picking, blueberries once, and she'd seen a black bear and, wolves, and all my uncle shot a wolf years ago, and, wolf. So it was almost, this is where I wanted to be. This is my, and, plus, there was no, Pops was not around. Oh, he was, but he wasn't in my face. I could go out and get lost during the day. So that was a great thing. But I thought of, when I'm out there pitching this hay in the back of my truck and stomping it down and packing more in there, and finally got it all picked up. I thought, gee whiz, isn't it how sometimes life works in circles? That in some ways, you become a football player, and you have this glamorous life that people assume that you have. And you know what? Sometimes you just don't get away from what, You dance with what brung you, as Bob Phillips used to say.
Yeah, we revert to our some of our fondest and earliest memories, I would believe.
And that once again, that's exactly what it is. That you go back to times in your life. And I think, unfortunately, as you get older, I think there's more of those moments. You've still got a ways to go before you get to where I am. I think, it's starting to see. It's starting to look like it's closing in. I can't see like I used to. All right, that's it for today. Riggo out.